or money. When you're 8 years old, you don't think of those things. The first love of racing is a delight in the mastery of movement. It is a control of something, a machine, partly, but also of yourself. Faster is better. More decisions have to be forced into each moment, and you discover abilities you never knew you had. If your name is Jason, and you drive a go-kart like this, or Paul Newman, and you drive a 900 horsepower, 200-mile-an-hour turbocharged car like this, the job is still the same. To stretch your skill, to explore your limits, to race at full throttle. Hi, I'm Sam Posey, and like Jason here, I too am a racing driver. In fact, I got my start on a course that was very much like this, except that mine was laid out on the side of a hill, and every time it rained hard, the center of the straight just got washed down the hill. But I made about as many laps around that track, I think, as I ever did around Indianapolis. In those early years on the farm, my love of racing was pretty much subconscious. I really didn't know why I wanted to do it so badly, just that I did. But I've been driving for 16 years now, and in the course of my career, I have been fascinated to discover in others that same love. Take Paul Newman, for instance. He didn't even start racing until he was in his late 40s, about the age I always thought I'd be headed for retirement. He was rich, famous. Looked at one way, racing seemed to offer him nothing but the potential for disaster. But Paul didn't see it that way. He started his driving career cautiously, avoiding mistakes. But within a few years, he had developed real speed and a restless need to win. Here he seizes the lead in the 1979 National Championship race at Road Atlanta and starts to pull away. To drive without mistakes under great pressure calls for total concentration, and Paul proved he had what it took. Turn after turn, he pushed his car to the limit as the opposition, who couldn't match the pace, faded in his mirrors. By the end of the race, he was all alone, sweeping under the checkered flag, the winner of his second national championship. On the victory stand, he was appropriately modest, giving credit to the car. But it was obvious that Paul Newman had become one of the country's best drivers. Like Paul, Midwesterner Frank Carney was also highly successful in another profession before he turned to racing. With his brother, he started the Pizza Hut chain and built it into a nationwide franchising corporation. Selling Pizza Hut in 1979, Frank realized that for the first time in his life, he had the chance to take up a sport. Wishing to be competitive on a national scale and reasoning that at 33 he was probably too old for conventional athletics, he chose racing. In contrast to Paul Newman and Frank Carney, Don Devendorf came to love racing very early in his life. In fact, already competing actively in motorsports during his college years. He became an aerospace scientist, think tank whiz, specializing in electronics. And he has used this expertise to build cars which are often superior to his rivals. Donnie's record proves the point. He's won over 100 races and 5 national championships. This is a track at Riverside, California, on the morning of a major world championship event run to the rules of the International Motorsports Association. The race distance is to be 6 hours. The event will start at noon and finish just before dusk. Like the races at Sebring and Le Mans, Riverside stress endurance as much as pure speed. Each car will have at least 2 drivers to take turns behind the wheel. Paul Newman's co-driver will be the Japanese Chen Mashiko Hasimi, while Frank Carney will team with Dick Davenport, an experienced road racer who was Frank's coach when he began racing. Sharing the driving with will be my friend Fred Stipp, whose company owns the car, will drive. With the start just minutes away, cars are rolled into position. More than 60 are entered in the race, but they won't all be competing in the same class. There are 3 classes, and therefore there will be 3 winners at the end. The class in which a car competes depends chiefly on how much it's changed from the way it is stock on the showroom floor. Paul's car here, my car, Frank Carney's, all start out as Datsun 280ZX, but because they are modified to different extents, they will race in different classes. 6 hours is a particularly difficult distance. These cars are so highly stressed that to have any hope of finishing, the driver is forced to compromise between all-out speed and a pace that will set the car. Paul is good at this. A couple of years ago, he took a second place in the famous 24-hour event at Le Mans, France. But today, the race is barely an hour old when he has a bad break. A front tire shreds. Here he goes into the pits. The tire is changed. Simultaneously, the Datsun is refueled and then joins the race. Half a minute has been lost. After a setback like this, the driver must resist the impulse to regain that lost ground too quickly. If he pushes too hard, he could overstress the car. Here, Paul wisely resumes his early pace. Then, without warning, he's in the pits again, and this time, it's for good. Chief mechanic Gene Crow diagnosed his engine problems. Earlier in the year, Carney and Dick Davenport scored a brilliant second place 24-hour race at Daytona Beach. Today, they're again demonstrating a flair for endurance racing. At 90 minutes, they're running a solid third in their class. By contrast, my race is a study in frustration. The rules for the class in which we are running allow use of a turbocharged engine, but ours is still under development, and we're racing here without it. So we have no chance to win and run the race as a sort of extended test of the chassis and the rest of the car. Carney's pit stop. His crack pit crew refuel the car as Dick Davenport replaces Frank behind the wheel. Fast stop, just 25 seconds. Meanwhile, further down the pit wall, my co-driver Fred awaits our stop. As I come down the pit lane, I unfasten the shoulder harness and seatbelt as I'm braking to a stop. Then I leap out and help Fred to get fastened in. As the afternoon wears on, the track becomes enough. Inevitably, incidents occur which thin the field. Tires fail, a driver hits oil and spins. Through all, Carney and Davenport continue their flawless drive. 4 hours into the race, they're running a strong second, and an hour later, they move into the lead. Before the race, I asked Frank if any of the lessons he had learned in business had carried over into racing.
The business lessons that I learned and the patience and the discipline have helped me in racing quite a bit.
Do you enjoy racing? I mean, do you just get a kick out of it?
Well, I get a kick out of it when I do well, and I sense the challenge when I don't. So I haven't done anything in my life where I kick out of it 100% of the time. There are down times and up times. The up times of racing are phenomenal.
As the end of the race approached, I had replaced Fred at the wheel of our car. The attrition thinned the field, and to my surprise, we had moved up into fourth. The faster car was closing in behind us, but we knew if we could get by without another pit stop for fuel, I had a chance to stay ahead. It was a gamble, and with my crew chief, Jack Gorman, warning me that we were critically low on gas, I set out the closing laps. Less than minutes to go. And then there was the checkered flag. First it was Frank Carney winning his class. Then I was taking fourth by a narrow margin. Frank Carney, Dick Davenport, winners after 6 long hours. I'm just thirsty and happy we've been. Jack measures the gas left in the tank. There would have been enough for another lap.
No gas.
After Riverside, the racers traveled north up California coastline to an entirely different topography. It's a place I've enjoyed coming for more than 20 years, the fabled Monterey Peninsula. There aren't many tracks where the racers take away from their cars to go sightseeing, but Monterey and the adjacent town of Carmel are exceptions. Practice and qualify in the morning, sightsee in the afternoon. It's a contrast that heightens the whole experience of racing at Laguna Seca. The track was originally named after the dry lake bed which it encircled, but now the lake and the track have become part of a county park. It seems appropriate that in this idyllic location, which is almost like a film set, that Paul Newman would have his race headquarters. Race day saw a huge crowd show up. In recent years, sports car racing has been enjoying a remarkable growth in popularity. Although major corporations have become actively involved both to publicize and test their products, racing is still primarily a sport. Sitting up on a hill with your friends and your beer, watching the racers sweat it out below, well, it's delightful. I know because I've been a spectator plenty of times myself. On this day, the action was to be thick and heavy. Paul had a fine drive, throwing his way through dense traffic on the narrow course. The big turbo ran beautifully, but a stop for fuel late in the race dropped him to 7th. After the race, he talked about his car. It's a fascinating thing to try a car right from scratch.
Well,
that's a first for me.
Yeah.
And going from 300 and some horsepower to 900 is that quantum leap we keep talking about.
Yeah.
But very interesting. The car is very manageable. Has no battery. And it's great fun to drive.
A car that didn't compete at Riverside or Unasaka was a radical and highly sophisticated racer the driver-engineer Don Devendorf was building. I paid a visit to his shop in El Segundo, California, to see the car under construction. Why is the instrumentation so complete?
Well, in the turbocharged engine, we cannot use the normal spark plugs as indicators of each cylinder. And so we've included these pyrometers to monitor the exhaust gas temperature of each cylinder, as well as the turbocharger to detect problems before they happen and become serious. This is our 6-cylinder turbocharged engine. We've selected 2 turbochargers to minimize throttle lag. We also have incorporated a new electronic injection system. This is one of the injectors. There will be 6 across here when it's completed.
How much do you suppose it'll put out for horsepower?
Well, we expect that on its maiden voyage that we'll have somewhere between 500 horsepower.
Well, Donnie, it's a terrific car, obviously, but I've got to ask you, isn't it maybe a little too complicated, a little too advanced? I mean, you've got dozens of unproven parts in this thing, and you're still trying to build it here in the shop. Meantime, other guys are out there racing.
This is the program that we've chosen, and if we've made the right decision, we'll see at the end of the year.
The first time Donnie's car was to run well was 3 months after my visit to his shop. The track was Portland International Raceway in Portland, Oregon, a 2-mile-long circuit on the banks of the Columbia River. The car had been tested before, but the test had encountered a series of technical problems. On one hand, this was to be expected. On the other, with a man as competitive and as ambitious as Devendorf's team, it was frustrating. By Portland, Donnie estimated the team had spent more than $9,000 on the project. Then all of a sudden, everything started to work. During the closing minutes of qualifying, Donnie at the wheel, the stopwatches along pit lane showed that he was making a run at pole position. Still unfamiliar with the car, he pulled out all the stops as John Neff and the rest of the crew watched and timed from the last turn. And he did it. By less than 1/10 of a second, he took the pole. Donnie, congratulations.
Thank you.
Fantastic. This was your first pole position with the car. How does it feel?
Feels great. You know, we're really seeing some of the potential that we've always hoped for in the car.
How is it running? I mean, the straightaway speed, so on.
Straightaway was fine, and we only had a couple laps, but it ended up working out well for us, and it was very, very close at the end, but we ended up with the pole, and we're extremely happy.
Let me tell you something about having race driving as a profession. It isn't a sport like baseball, football, where most people have tried it for themselves at one time or another. Oh, sure, people have driven cars on the highway. But a magnificent machine like this one that Paul New drives, very few of us will ever be lucky enough to drive one. But I'm about to take it out for a test drive. Come with me now and see a little bit what it's like. One of the first things you notice when you get in a racing car is how comfortable it is inside. I mean, it may look, but in fact, everything is sized perfectly to fit the driver, from the molded seat back, to the way the belt, to the distance the steering wheel it is away from me. There's something almost ritualistic about the moments just before going out onto the track. First, I put in my earplugs. Then I pull on the fire balaclava. I feel as if I'm in another world almost. I can no longer hear the mechanics' voices, and like a deep sea diver, I become conscious of the sound of my own breathing in the helmet. The technique of high-speed driving demands that you use the whole width of the road. Take the turns fastest, not by using the shortest route through them, but the longest. First wide to the outside, then into the apex, then out wide again. What makes a good driver? There are certain physical necessities, sharp eyes, good reflexes, good balance. But in the end, these mean nothing more to a great driver than brushes and paint would to an artist. What separates one driver from another is all in the mind. Concentration, judgment, the will to win. Technique taught, but what really counts cannot. From the West Coast, the racers head east to Lime Rock, Connecticut. I live in a nearby town. For me, it was a return home. When I outgrew a dirt track on the farm, I was able to get permission to practice at Lime Rock, and I drove here long before I was old enough to have a license to drive on the street. Lime Rock also happens to be a place where Paul Newman did much of his early racing, and as a result, both of us had high expectations for the weekend. The race was held on a particularly hot afternoon in late May. Its 2.5-hour length prompted some teams to use 2 drivers per car, but Paul decided we'd each go it alone. From the moment of the start, it was obvious that the careful pacing and strategies used for endurance races like Riverside was out the window. This was to be a sprint all the way. Plymouth is a track with a hometown advantage really pays off. The pavement is rough, the track twisty, and it just seems that the more miles you have under your belt here, the quicker you go. All at once, Paul was competitive with cars that had been faster in earlier races, and so was I. My team was still without our turbo engine, but on this track, where the cornering ability of the car counted for so much, our Datsun moved quickly from 6th in our class to 5th, then 4th. Meanwhile, Paul was running 5th overall, and his rivals couldn't seem to stay on the road. Hobbs went off in the BMW, Chris Cord spun Monza, and here the Italian ace Gianpiero Moretti slides off the downhill in his turbo Porsche. In the midst of the action, Paul shot into the pits. Shades of Riverside, he'd cut another tire. Moments later, I too rushed into the pits, but this was just a routine stop to clean the oil-streaked windshield and refuel. I was back on the track in less than 20 seconds. I found it was fairly easy to catch cars, but with the horsepower I needed to pass them on the straights, I often had several laps for an opening. I was exhausted in the heat, but things were going incredibly well. The race drew to a close. I found myself in 2nd place. For a few moments, I was dazed with heat and dehydration, but it was great to realize that well in front of the home crowd. For Paul, however, there was no happy ending. His car's experimental throttle linkage had failed with less than a quarter of the race to go. Over when the racers came to Road Atlanta in the George Hills. My team and Paul's were both fit for the year, but for Don Devendorf, Road Atlanta was a critical event. His pole position at Portland proved that the car was capable of a burst of speed. The team had to show that they could sustain that speed. In Atlanta, Donnie qualified 2nd behind a BMW designed specially for competition. As the race starts, both Donnie and the BMW are obscured by cars running in a different class. Here comes the pack toward the first turn. 60 laps, 150 miles to go. There's Donnie. He's made a good start. Through the first turn, it's the BMW, then Donnie right behind as they head up the hill. Here they come into the S's. Donnie, this is great. He's staying with the BMW on a part of the track I wouldn't have thought favored the Datsun. There he goes. The back straight. All that counts here is horsepower. Devendorf, he's pulling out around the BMW. They're neck and neck, and Donnie's taking the lead. No question about it. To make a pass like you need significantly superior horsepower. Now to the bridge. Donnie is able to hold his advantage. On the hill to the finish line. And there's a spin. A Porsche and BMW are off. I wouldn't say either car looks damaged. Okay, end of the first lap, and it's Devendorf leading. This is really the first direct confrontation between the Datsun and the BMW. Here they head through the S's. Donnie maintaining his advantage. Here's the straight. Look at the gap Donnie has opened up in just 1 lap, and now he's going to pull it further ahead. You know, think back to all the calculations made when the car was still in the design stage, and now we're seeing all that stuff come true. I'm amazed at the power. Look at Donnie rip past the Corvette. Now it's just a question of whether the car can. They're crashing the bridge. That thing has really been torn apart. Well, this Porsche blocks the track. That's Brian Redmond squeezing through there in the Lola. Good. The driver's getting out okay. But look at that gas leaking out of fire! Oh my God, it's burst into flames! This is going to block the track completely. They have to stop the race, no question about it. Yep, that's what they're doing. It's the only choice. You obviously can't have cars trying to race through that fire. Boy, just look at those flames. I'm glad we saw the driver get out. All the cars stopped safely, but it took an hour to clean up the track. When the race resumed, Donnie continued to run well, although tire troubles kept him from staying in the lead. Nevertheless, for Donnie and for the team, Road Atlanta was the moment all their work paid off. How did it go for you? You led early on, you had tire trouble.
Yes, and we had a little bit of a long pit stop, but, you know, taking all things into account, we led, the car went well, and the exhaust system held together, and we met our goal.
Listen, we saw this car, of course, a few months ago when it was only parts and pieces on the floor, and it's fantastic. You just finished a really grueling 150-mile event. How does it look for you for next year?
It looks great. The car finishing this way, this race, really is encouraging, and I'm really looking forward to
next year. It was still many months away, but already the planning and the work had begun. For Paul Newman, next year would mean a brand new car with which would utilize much of the technology developed in the turbo car this season. So the coming year was very much on his mind. But there was just one small problem.
Every year I keep saying that I'm going to, stop all this. And so now it looks like I got a couple of really good that will go during spring and the summer. So all I have to do is burn all those scripts, you see, so I can get back in the car again.
Any racing season will have its good moments and its bad. But in the long run, winning or losing matters less to those of us who race than you might think. What does matter are those few fleeting moments behind the wheel in full control when the rest of the world is forgotten. Jason, you ready?
Yeah.
Welcome to the first annual Caesars Plus Grand Prix. It's the final event of the 1981 Formula One season, and it couldn't be a more exciting day. Today, one of three drivers will become the 1981 World Driving Champion.
Moves into position on the grid. Third starting spot belongs to Kenny Newman's Budweiser March. Sullivan says he thinks 90-degree heat and oppressive humidity will be a real factor here today.
Well, I believe so. I mean, just on the drivers, the cars, the track temperature is going to be real high. We have a particular problem with this track and braking because you come off of such long, fast straights into very slow corners. The brakes are a problem. We carry water in the car to inject onto the brake disc and so forth. The cockpit temperature in some of the cars will be, I would say between 120 and 145 degrees, plus we got 6 layers of clothes on as well. That'll be a factor. The humidity, of course, is always a factor, especially for people like maybe Allen or Jr., who comes from New Mexico, where it's a dry heat, but this humidity might get to him. I'm hoping so, because I come from this.
But it will take more than familiarity with the humidity to stop Unser's championship charge. The series leader shocked the Railbirds by winning his debut race in a Can-Am car, then proved that was no fluke by winning round 2 as well. Second-ranked Al Holbert skipped those 2 races, then replaced past champion Patrick Tambay in the Team VDS car. He's since won 2 straight, but Holbert has great respect for little Al.
Al Unser on the pole, it will be very tough. He beat me out by about a half second. Well, less than a half second, 600ths of a second, as a matter of fact. And I'm sure he felt the same way. We felt we had more left, but when we got to the afternoon session, the heat slowed everybody down. So he started on the pole at Mosport and didn't stay there that long. So, anything can happen.
And so this cavalcade of supercars moves off for its pace lap. The tension-packed final moments, the adrenaline pumping build-up to the start of this longest of all Can-Am races, a 160-mile quest for gold and glory. Unser, Holbert, and Sullivan head a star-studded field, warming their tires, steeling themselves for the battle to come, approaching that flicker of green at the start of the Road America Can-Am Challenge. Pre-race tension have created a Can-Am pressure cooker. Here is the battleground on which today's drama will unfold. One of this country's fastest and most demanding circuits, Road America is 4 miles of high-intensity action. Straightaway speeds touching 170 miles per hour strain these 575 horsepower engines to the limit. 15 turns put a premium on braking and handling. The field comes to the green flag, and the Road America Can-Am Challenge is underway. Pole sitter Unser in white loses the lead to Holbert as they rush toward turn one. Now Unser with a daring move to the outside regains command. Al Unser, the early front runner here at Road America. Al Holbert and Danny Sullivan are in hot pursuit as the field streams up the hill where the speeds escalate, climbing to over 170 miles per hour. At the end of the straightaway, Holbert is alongside Unser for a moment. Sullivan and company in tight formation just behind. And as the rest of the field breaks down hard for this tricky left-hander, oh, there's trouble among the back markers. Pat McGonigal is off in the grass. A masterful bit of driving as he maintains control. That could have been a major incident as McGonigal got into difficulties amidst a lot of traffic. The two lead machines are both brand new cars here. Unser out front in an all-new Gallus Racing GR3. Holbert in hot pursuit driving a new lighter version of the Tony Sakali designed Chevrolet-powered BDS 001. At the end of lap one, you see the interval among the first three cars as they hurtle up the long Road America front chute. Unser, who last year dominated the American Super V Series, has certainly learned his racing lessons quickly and well. Sports Car Club of America runs Can-Am Racing. Last year, Unser was their professional Rookie of the Year. This freckle-faced newlywed spent his first 3 seasons in the rough and tumble oval track world of sprint car racing. But he has adapted his skills to the sophistication of road racing with an ease that seems to ensure his superstar status in the future. Unser holds off Holbert. Sullivan in hot pursuit. Oh, Unser has slowed dramatically. The leader is pulling off onto the grass. Al Unser's day has ended at Road America less than 2 laps after the start. The new leader at Road America, Al Holbert. Danny Sullivan inherits the runner-up spot. And as ejected, Al Unser Jr. will take that long walk to the pits, well aware that his big series lead is likely to shrink significantly here this afternoon. Meanwhile, there remains a classic confrontation. Danny Sullivan, the ever-smiling young favorite of the ladies, in relentless pursuit of the older and more experienced Al Holbert, a soft-spoken family man, a born-again Christian. One key to this battle, the unique Road America pattern repeated twice each lap of long, high-speed straightaways ending in very tricky turns. Sullivan says the brakes are critical.
Turn one is a fast third gear corner or fourth gear depending on how geared. But the second straight down into turn 5, you're coming down a hill into the corner and you're doing the same speed, and it's a real old 30-mile-an-hour corner, so you really stand on them there. That's why they have that big escape road.
Sullivan flawlessly navigates that difficult second racing real estate. The rest of the field demonstrates a variety of approaches to turn 5. Under heavy braking, Jim Truman's car gets skitty, threatens to hurl itself into the crash wall. Truman owns a national motel chain and one of the tracks on which the Can-Am Series runs. From the pits, Jim Adams frantically signals his group as he makes an unscheduled stop in the Cook Racing Cola, the only European Group C entry in the race. This particular machine made its debut at 24 Hours of Le Mans. It represents a major controversy surrounding the decision to open Can-Am Racing to unlimited Group C cars, many of which are turbocharged and bullet fast. There were fears among the other competitors that Group C machines would totally dominate. Indeed, that they would render all the other Can-Am race cars obsolete. That hasn't happened yet, and it won't happen today. Not surprisingly, here at Road America, Jim Adams has trouble with his brakes. Now Randy Lewis is on pit road, also an unscheduled stop. His crew can't seem to find the problem. Amid all the sophistication of a state-of-the-art Can-Am race team, simple communication could be the biggest hang-up. We don't know what's wrong. And so Lewis rolls back into the battle, doubtless frustrated with a non-productive trip to the sidelines. While Jim Truman smooths his approach to turn 5 and stalks the front runners in the under 2-liter division. Truman, the defending series champion in that race for smaller engine cars, he's virtually every road circuit in America. But he said that much experience can hurt you.
You know this so well, and I found yesterday when it was a desire on my part faster and faster, and as the car got tuned in a little better suspension-wise, I was actually driving 3 different corners here
differently than I ever have in other cars. So I have to accept it each time with a new car as if it were a whole new track. Or you can sit there and say, I know the racetrack and kind of lazy, and you're not going to be anywhere near a great time. Yesterday, near the end of the session, I was all by myself out there, and I said I got no reason to not go faster and faster and faster. I put together what at the moment to me was an ultimate lap. I didn't want to go that fast anymore. So.
As this 160-mile grind continues, there's trouble. Rex Ramsey spins, sending John Morton in grass. Throtle Ruse and Dr. Frank Joyce safely by on the inside. And now the leader is on pit road. Al Holbert in for the first of 2 mandatory fuel stops. The 30-gallon tank will be topped off in a matter of seconds. A fuel stop only, and Holbert will be gone. But the overflow bottle jams. It's stuck to the car. A crewman who tried to free that dump can has been struck, and Holbert is definitely hauling unwanted baggage into turn 1. He's trying to drive the car with one hand and deal with that flopping bottle with the other. Meanwhile, that crew member is okay. He was nicked by the rear wing as Holbert exited the pits. Back on the track, Danny Sullivan roars into the lead. Holbert has slowed dramatically, but as he goes under the bridge, the offending dump can finally flies clear. And so, the leaderboard has been shuffled here. Danny Sullivan is the new Can-Am Challenge front-runner at Road America.
I'm Randy Lewis, driver for the Kerbari Racing Team. Driving and drinking don't mix. I'd never drive when I drink, and neither should you.
On a sweltering Sunday afternoon in Wisconsin, a crowd of 40,000 fans at Road America, a measure of the popularity of Can-Am Challenge road racing. Famous for close-to-the-action spectating and concession stand bratwurst and corn on the cob, Road America is a showcase for North America's premier road racing series, the Can-Am Challenge. And in that on-track action, the leader, Danny Sullivan, is on pit road for fuel. The red-clad Paul Newman racing crew goes quickly about its work. A marvelous stop for Sullivan, a mere 6 seconds to refuel, but that is enough to return the lead to the hands of Al Holbert. Here you see the info from Holbert to Danny Sullivan, now relegated again to second place. Sullivan's team is unique in the sports in that its owner is more famous than the driver. Let's eavesdrop on some tongue-in-cheek banter between those two.
About the parts not being quite up to specs, is that right?
Was it parts or personnel?
Well, either one. But no. First you talked about parts, you got into personnel.
No. HMS Budweiser is doing fine.
Are they really?
Yes. What do you think?
Well, he's a terrific pool player, but he's not much of a driver. Did you get him? We played the worst game of pool last night, I can tell you. Probably in the history of the game.
You know what I'm really worried about? It's he's knocking pay down from $15 to $13 because of the pushing I keep getting on the grid.
What's wrong with that? I think the price is right.
The $13?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, but I have to buy gas.
You talked about some owners being cheaper than others. What do you mean by that, Dan?
No, I wasn't. I didn't say that. That was under duress.
You said to me earlier.
Well, it's only something to do with the size of the bets that Paul places. I mean, 24.5 that we had bet on the pool game last night. He made me pay.
Dan, earlier you said you have no idea what it's like coming down for that green flag in a machine that was built by parts from the lowest bidder. Remember you told me? We have a contract with the Defense Department, which is why they do it substandard. All of our parts come straight from airplane stuff.
I wanted to ask him what he thought about the driver and the team. He said he couldn't.
You go ahead. What do you think about the driver and the team, Paul?
On this team?
Yeah.
This is live.
He's very persistent too. I mean, he nags about the quality of his rent-a-wreck, and I don't know what to add to that.
You said you really like him because he's busy.
only at the breakfast table. I've never seen him really aggressive in anything else.
For all that fun and frolic, Sullivan, in fact, is deadly serious and very, very aggressive come race day. He continues his dogged pursuit of Al Holbert, the leader in the Road America Can-Am. In the race for the under 2-liter crown, number 69 Bertel Roos is in command. The fire Swede, now living in Pennsylvania, dazzling the fans with his now familiar broadslides. He's chasing John Kalajian in the race for 4th place overall. Though his engine is less than half the size of the giant Can-Am monsters, Roos ranks 4th in the overall series standings, and he's a runaway leader in the under 2-liter division. Interestingly enough, Bertel is quite pleased that he does not own his own race car.
I only drive this car for the guy, the racing team. So I'm not too much involved. I only do the driving because I'm so busy at home. I'm involved in racing. I have a racing school at Pocono Raceway, Pennsylvania, where I teach people how to drive racing cars. And we teach people how to drive regular cars, and we rent race cars, and we design and build race cars there. So I'm happy I don't have to be involved in this more than on the drive side.
As he decelerates from the fastest point racetrack, then squares off turn 5, Roos is building his under 2-liter division lead over the light of defending series champ Jim Truman. But now Truman's in trouble. Smoke has begun to erupt from his car. Thick white clouds billowing out. A piece of the bodywork has somehow come in contact with the left front tire, and Truman makes a speedy exit. Up front, Holbert has things his way for the moment. Behind Danny Sullivan has closed just a bit in second. And on pit road, John Morton pulling in. The crew goes about the business of refueling that car, but something more serious is wrong here. Morton has had an up-and-down day, near the front early, slipping to the back, charging back to 3rd place just before this stop, but now Morton is unbuckling. He's going to call it a day, victim of a broken transmission. Once again, the running order in the Road America Can-Am Challenge has been jumbled.
Paul Newman Can-Am Racing Team.
This one's for you, for all you do. The top speeders is coming through.
Yeah, while you're watching all the red hot action, that's the time to cool off with the king of beers.
For all you do.
This Bud's for you.
This is Motorsports Ballet, the rhythmic beauty of Can-Am racing. At Wisconsin's Road America, Al Holbert, the Can-Am confrontation over Danny Sullivan. Led briefly and is now the runner-up. Sullivan presses on in hopes of pulling out his first win of the year. The remarkable Bertel Roos leads the under 2 division. He's 3rd overall. 4th position belongs to Michigan's John Kalajian. And in hot pursuit of him, Randy Lewis of California is 5th. 156 votes are in the record book. Al Holbert is in his final lap, entering turn 1, apparently en route to his 2nd consecutive victory in the Can-Am Series. Holbert, a protege of the late Mark Donohue, who won the 1973 Can-Am Challenge here, the man who owns the absolute lap record for this 4-mile circuit. For this Warrington, Pennsylvania automobile dealer, a 36-year-old father of 2, this will be his 2nd Road America Can-Am win. He first claimed victory here in 1980 en route to 2nd place in the series standings. In his remarkable Can-Am career, Holbert has started 40 races, won 7, ranked in the top 5 a remarkable 24 times. This will be a very popular win among the tens of thousands of fans here. Old-timers in the crowd cheered Al's father, Bob Holbert, to the U.S. Road Racing Championship. Today, the accolades go to Al Holbert, winner of the Road America Can-Am Challenge. Today's $25,000 payday raises Holbert's career earnings to $340,000. Even more important, the win combines with Al Unser Jr.'s failure to finish and significantly tightens the '82 championship race. In victory lane, the celebration is on. In its 4th Can-Am Challenge, Road America about to cross third two-time winner, Al Holbert, who's typically modest about it all.
Well, I had some help.
I talked to you earlier about Mid-Ohio, and I said, could you repeat it? And you said, you might.
Well, Al Unser certainly obliged me. I'm really sad what happened to him. I don't know, but he was being a little smarter. No, let's start over. He was being as smart as he ought to have been. He's taking it easy. He was braking very early. That was going to be a strategy to just try to make sure he didn't get away, lead if we could. And he was braking very early, so I knew, well, so much for strategy as far as the difference in the race result. We were going to have to run for it. It's unfortunate, but, you know, there's no doubt about it. The VDS car was there and it finished, and it just had as much speed as I needed at any time.
Al, we noticed when we talked to you yesterday that you looked kind of relaxed and confident. You must have felt very good about that car even yesterday.
Well, there's a whole bunch of circumstances that brought me here. You know, I have a strong commitment to Jesus, and my whole life is turned over to him now, and he just puts me in this situation, and I couldn't be in a better situation. Great people, great fans, a great racetrack, and most of all, a good team, great team.
And so the America Can-Am Challenge's history, and Al Holbert's name is inscribed on the winner's roster for a second time. Throtle Rouge, showing the effects of the Road America heat and humidity, dominates the under 2-liter division. His victory in that class good for third overall behind Danny Sullivan. And at the pinnacle of success, Al Holbert, winner of the Road America Can-Am.
Hello, everyone. I'm
to pull the team together. But time is the one thing that Hill never seems to have quite enough of.
Graham Hill doesn't only drive fast cars. He leads a very full and busy life. Yesterday he was in Belgium. This morning at 6 o'clock he was on his airfield, tinkering with his aeroplane. He then came up to the office, answered some letters, made some telephone calls. He arrived here in time to join us for cocktails. He's speaking. This afternoon he is testing an invalid carriage. He is then going back to the office for some more letters. This evening he will be at a pub in Tottenham receiving a cheque for guide dogs for the blind, and tomorrow he'll be in Exeter. He is also in a class on his own as a public speaker. And I'm not going to take him on at that sport. And so, ladies and gentlemen, Graham Hill.
Sickening, isn't it? Tommy?
So, Graham, I wonder if that National Farmers Union dinner that you want me to speak at in November, it's the Friday the 16th, isn't it? The night before we actually come to you for shooting, is that right? For that weekend? And then come back.
Sometimes I look at my diary and I think, what the hell am I doing this for? And I get there, and of course by the time that week comes round, it begins to get filled up with all sorts of other things and dates you've made months and months previously, and even years previously. I mean, I get people writing me ask for dates a year hence.
Then I can talk to them about stuff they want to hear, rather than me just banging on about something they might not want to hear. Yeah, I'll answer any questions except on money. Yes, anything.
Well, there it is, a cheque for £500 that you've given me. Of course, I'm always ready to accept cheques, and naturally, I see you made out my name. Graham Hill's Hard Luck Fund. Now, speaking as an Arsenal supporter, where am I? Let's just find out where I am. Is it Tottenham, is it? Yes.
And here we go then for Team 39, Tony Jacklin, Ken Barrington, Alex Rice and Tony McEwen. And here he comes, coming through, thanks to Graham. And Graham this year driving the Shadow Embassy racing car, which is the team captain, owner, proprietor, agent for all leading makes. Nice to see you, Graham.
I get between 400 and 500 invitations a year for various things, from lunches, talks, garage openings, fetes. But most of the time, a lot of the selection is done for me purely by events. And motor racing has to take first place.
Well, these are geraniums.
Yeah?
Yeah, they'll be boarded up around the house, all around the side of the house, and in these tubs.
In 15 minutes, Hill will be leaving to compete in his next race, 1,000 miles away. The pace there will contrast greatly to the few minutes he takes in the grounds of his home chatting with his gardener. These moments, away from any outside pressure, are not very frequent.
What's his name in the village?
Oh, Charlie Herbert.
Yeah? Charlie Herbert.
Yeah. I might as well order a lot and then it'll be done with it.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what I did. I ordered a pair of shears and a wheelbarrow for you.
Did you?
Oh,
the glass. Oh, thank you very much.
Monte Carlo, the playground of the rich and famous, known throughout the world for its prince and princess, gambling, and Grand Prix, staged once every year around the harbor and through the streets of Monaco. For Graham Hill, Monaco is more than just the next race where he is anxious to prove himself in his new car. It is the circuit where he made his Grand Prix debut 15 years ago, where he has had a record 5 victories in 7 years, and where he will now drive his 150th Grand Prix, a milestone no other driver is ever likely to challenge. At Monaco, Hill is popular. The invitations flood in from the moment he arrives, and this can make it hard to concentrate on racing. But this is the one time each year when Hill likes to meet the friends who he has met through racing during his career.
Fine.
Yeah.
How much?
145 francs. So it must be
Well, it's about
14
13 quid a bottle.
13.50.
A bottle of champagne?
Yeah. And we had it on lock, didn't we? We didn't just have
Damn me.
Yeah.
Well, it must have been. No wonder you haven't got a dry mouth at that point. Bloody good stuff.
This stuff at the Japan is it really was.
Don't you find that motor racing splits into 2 lots here? You get those people, yourself and Jackie and so on, who come here and stay in this fantastic Hotel de Paris, and you get the others, the slightly less affluent ones, like myself, who stay over the road.
Oh, come on.
Let me cry in a minute.
The Metropole.
Hill gets together over breakfast with an old friend and past rival.
It's a lot better than it used to
The
be.
Metropole is a very swank hotel.
I'm glad you said that, yeah. But that's one of the great things, I think, of Monte Carlo, is you know the police, who I think are very, the nicest of anywhere here. And the guys who run the race, they're never like they are, say, at Monza, where they push you around and beat you about. Here, I think everybody's
the same faces everywhere. You come here and there's the same porters and the same waiters and the same chambermaids and the same policemen and they're all terribly friendly, yeah. Miss Oscar. And of course, Rose's bar. I always wanted to pop in there.
What's Rose's bar?
Well, the Chatham bar, down here on the hill. You know, when they widened the road here or did something, built another block of flats, they pulled down Rose's bar, and we all wrote to the Prince and said, "Oh wait, you can't pull down Rose's bar."
Did they rebuild it?
Yeah, they gave her another one. They built a super Rose's bar, just a little bit further down the hill.
And did it keep the character of what was
Not
there?
Not quite the same. It's still got the same pictures in there, same photographs from years and years ago.
Sur la 7e ligne, le numéro 12, Jean-Emile. Et on va faire 5 points de Grand Prix Monaco, il y a ici du MFT Shadow.
holds a bit of a special place in my heart because I had my first Grand Prix drive ever was at Monte Carlo. I had my first hat trick in Grand Prix was at Monte Carlo when I won in 63, 64 and 65. And in 68 I won again, and in 69 I won again. And it was, of course, naturally a tremendous coincidence that my 150th Grand Prix should happen to fall at the time of the 1973 Monte Carlo Grand Prix.
Prince Renier of Monaco.
There's a lot of affection for Graham here because, after all, he is Mr. Grand Prix. He is very outgoing and a Mediterranean character. Local people here, they're sort of very friendly themselves, and I think they perhaps they don't expect such friendliness from, let's say, from an Anglo-Saxon who is sometimes a little bit more snooty and reserved. Whereas they find in Graham a sort of friend, and I think they like that.
Monaco is one of the true road circuits still left in Grand Prix racing. For just 4 days each year, the streets are closed down to normal traffic as the drivers prepare for the race ahead.
Just a quick change of direction here. Braking very heavily here, selecting third gear, then taking a nice fine cutting line, just missing that bit and just clipping that bit and drifting out. Now we come to this is the new bit of the circuit we're on now. And
Hill memorizes turns, track surfaces, and braking points. It's a time when a driver comes to terms with a circuit and his car.
And then down into second gear. Now this is a new section here where it's a very fast left and right, or very slow left and right, but it happens so quickly. In second gear, short, sharp burst up here. The road's a little uneven due to the drains. Can you imagine? And then a sharp right and left again. Change the direction, again in second gear, come out of here with the power full on. And we got the Royal Box, coming up to the Royal Box on our left now, where Prince Rainier and Princess Grace sit and watch the race. Imagine, it's a bit noisy for them. Anyway, after all these years, I expect they've got used to it. Anyway, come along here now, the start and finishing line is just here. With any luck, you get here first on Sunday.
At Monaco, there are more bends, more gear changes, more braking points per minute than in any other Grand Prix circuit. The car takes a beating, and so does the driver. He often loses several pounds in weight during the course of the 2-hour race.
The corner, you can't quite see the apex, and just clip that barrier there. Well, of course, don't quite touch it, and make a line out to the outside. Up into fourth gear, and halfway up the hill we get a bit of a right, left and a right, a little wiggle woggle, which of course makes overtaking virtually impossible because the cars cut the corner and take a very fine line through this. There's Roses. Rosie! Oh. To sleep. Anyway, haven't got time for that, so we steam up the top here. Now the car gets very light as you come up towards the Hotel de Paris here in the Casino Square. And you see we come up the brow of a hill, braking hard now, being very careful not to brake too hard when the car gets light over that hump. Down into third gear, accelerate through this corner. There's the casino in front of you, Hotel de Paris on the left. And then, with any luck, you'll come rushing through into the Casino Square.
The Monaco Grand Prix attracts the top Formula One teams from the world of racing. With several young drivers coming to the front each year, competition gets tougher and victory harder to achieve. Monaco is still the one race that everybody wants to win.
This is Hill's third outing with his own team. Nobody knows the circuit better, but with a car uncompetitive and a team still finding its legs, Hill cannot find any real joy from his 150th Grand Prix.
I'm a realist and know that only one person can ever win a race. And if I don't win it, there's obviously a very good reason. A, the other bloke's driven faster, or B, he's got a faster car, or my car's given trouble, or I didn't drive very well. It's all there, it's quite obvious. And that's one of the times when you mustn't fool yourself. That's when you've got to be honest. You must never, ever get disheartened. And you can very easily get disheartened. And it's a very, very disappointing game. It's a shatteringly disappointing game. I mean, you can really be doing well, and every time something lets you down, the car lets you down, something fails, and you just never seem as though you're going to win a race or get anywhere. But I find that if I don't do well in a race, it just makes me more determined for the next one.
Well, it's gone through my mind, and other people said, well, it's about time he hung his helmet up. I said, yes, I expect it is. But if you think that, why don't you ring him up, old chap? I'll give you the number. I don't advise you to.
Graham's true motivation is his love and enjoyment for what he's doing. Now, he's asked probably 100 times a day, why don't you give it up? You've done enough. Shouldn't you retire? You're getting a bit long in the tooth. To which Graham replies, in all sincerity, as long as I'm enjoying it and getting a kick out, why should I give it up?
Of all the people in motor racing I can recollect, I don't think I've met anybody who enjoys his motor racing so much as Graham Hill does.
I don't know how long any racing driver can carry on racing. I can only speak for myself, and I happen to know, I mean, I know that I'm racing now at 44. I have no idea when I shall retire. I mean, obviously it's got to be the next few years, but I mean, I just don't know. I've never been in this position before. I've got no previous experience to draw on.
It's rather strange to me that in a period of time when I would be looking forward to retirement, Graham is just sort of getting his second win and is now running his own race team. He's gone through the series to being started as a private entrant to going right back to a private entrant.
I can see why Graham doesn't retire. People say, why doesn't he retire? He's had a great life and so on. I can understand he doesn't, and I think the sport will be a lot worse off if and when he does, because I think that you can always go to Graham, get a good quote, you get a lot of humour, and he goes around as an ambassador, because wherever Graham goes, think of motor racing.
He will never let go, and so therefore that car will be as good as the rest of the cars. And it's just so much a part of his life that without it, I don't know what he would do, or me for that matter.
In 1972, Graham Hill wins the Le Mans 24-hour sports car classic. By so doing, becomes the first man to achieve the Triple Crown racing: Le Mans, the Indianapolis 500, and the World Drivers' Championship. It has always been Graham's philosophy to persevere regardless of the odds, and set his own standards. He is one of sport's true individualists, a man apart.
I do know of his complete and utter determination, very single-mindedness, to the point where, on occasions, it's sheer utter selfishness. But then, on the other hand, it produces results, and it's what makes people successful, and I admire him for it.
And perhaps Graham was the man who taught me to begin with in Formula One, because we drove for the same team in BRM back in 1965.
He's worked very hard to become a top-grade driver. He's worked very hard at not only doing that, but also becoming publicised for it, and enjoyed it, which is the important thing.
I don't know what I'm going to do, you know, eventually when I retire from racing, but something will turn up, and I'm sure that I'll just go steaming into that and start doing other things which are just as time-occupying. Motor racing obviously has got its dangers, and because of this, you become much more aware of life.
and you extract more out of life. And I'm sure that one's family and friends and relatives are aware of this also. If you like, it's an ingredient in one's life which contributes something. You go out in the garden and you look at the flowers and you hear the birds and you see the grass, and then you think, well, I'm sure there must be a God. And I cannot prove to myself that there isn't one. Similarly, I can't prove there is one. And I know a lot of people believe in God, and I see it, it's very evident. And I think religion serves a very, very good purpose in this life. And I think it serves a greater purpose for some people than it does for others. And I don't, at this moment, feel I need religion, but I know damn well if I was stuck in the middle of the Atlantic in a boat all by myself and been there for days, and I was hungry and tired and cold and not much chance of surviving, I know jolly well I'd start praying. I've always thought that there's an afterlife. I've always looked upon that as a bit of a bonus. Something I hadn't quite expected, and if there is one, then cheers, you know, I'm all for it. I wouldn't mind having another one.
Pack up your things and roll home. You come on so many times now.
Make a machine goes faster, and somebody will race it and push it to the limit. You never know where that limit is exactly until you get there.
It's the greatest feeling in the world. You just go, man, all out.
Racing is now our #1 sport. Its Super Bowl is the Indianapolis 500, a 2.5-mile oval track with all left turns. Some say people come to see the crashes. Well, if that's true, they regularly get their money's worth.
The world goes by like a blur. Reaction ain't enough. You got to anticipate trouble. You got to depend on the machine under you.
And sometimes the crowd gets more than it bargained for. Spectacular crashes brought demands for better safety measures. A race car full of high-test fuel is a hurtling bomb. But most proposals would cut the speed, and nobody was ready to do that. Not until 1973. That was the year Andy Granatelli brought 3 of the fastest machines ever designed to Indy, and 3 of the best drivers, including Swede Savage and Gordon Johncock. Savage is the bright hope of the STP team. He turns out for his qualifying heat in the Red Eagle Offenhauser number 40. Just finished a year of hospital care following a serious crash at the Ontario Speedway in California. He feels this will be his year at Indy. A seasoned driver at 26, he is known for stretching the limits of both track and machine. His best lap is clocked at 197 miles per hour, the fastest yet. And the crowd acts as if he already had the race wrapped up. He wins the coveted pole position, number 1 to start. Teammate Gordon Johncock also qualifies, but veteran Art Pollard's car veers into a wall and disintegrates. Pollard is killed, widely loved and respected in the racing community. His loss will later be regarded as an omen. Race day dawns bright, if not clear. The fastest field in the history of the track awaits a crowd of 350,000 fans. The pre-race hoopla goes off on schedule, with a special ovation for 23 just-returned prisoners of war on hand to watch this particular bit of Americana. But the skies don't hold. On and off rains cause a 4-hour delay in the start. Crews are nervous. When the weather breaks, officials give the go-ahead. There is a palpable release of tension as the business of racing begins. All the last-minute details push everything else out of mind. This is what they're here for. Rush onto the track, something is wrong. The cars seem unable to find their proper places. Instead of a neat lineup in the pace lap, the field looks like a freeway traffic jam.
Somebody screwed us up. Swede didn't get the pole position. I don't even know where I was.
But the starter waves the green flag, and the cars leap into the race. Barely into the first lap, Salt Walter careens into a wire mesh fence, spewing 75 gallons of burning fuel onto the crowd. A dozen spectators are injured. Walter, at 25, the youngest driver on the track, is badly burned. The race proceeds slowly under the yellow flag, but by now the drizzle has turned into a downpour, and officials call for the red flag. The lineup for the second day start is no more organized than the first, but there is an urgency now to get on with it, as if a start could somehow hold back the rain which threatens again. But it's a vain hope. With drops already spattering on their helmets, the drivers follow the pace car to the red flag. The third day is gray, but so far dry. Less than half the fans wait through 5 uncertain hours to early afternoon. Then a break in the clouds makes it seem as if the ominous events of the past week have been settled somehow. The jinx lifted. Athletes key themselves up to an event. Postponement winds nerves tight. But the strain imposed by the 2 false starts dissolves in the roar of the powerful engines. Pollard's death is not forgotten, but for the moment set aside. Walter is hurt, but okay. And the race is on. Art's leap as smoke signals trouble on the third turn. But the only casualty is a burnt-out motor, and the pace car leaves the field to the races. Bobby Unser in a White Eagle takes the early lead. His brother Al is also in this race. A third brother injured in a racing accident years ago and now confined to a motorized wheelchair is chief mechanic. On the second lap, Bobby Ellison, star of the Southern Stock Car Circuit, is forced to pack it in with engine trouble.
We were keeping up a good clip, but it wasn't sprint time, you know? The track was slick and, well, we were just kind of cautious.
On the fourth lap, Peter Revson slides into a wall. He survives. By the ninth lap, Swede Savage has gotten back up to third place. His average speed so far is 180. He turns in for a pit stop for fuel and a fresh pair of right side tires, the side that gets most wear on the bank turns. In record time, his crew has the car ready to roll again. Teammate Gordon Johncock in number 20 has been moving up, and the third STP driver, rookie Graham McRae, is holding his own. The pit stop drops Savage back. Johncock now holds third place. By the 58th lap, Savage has overtaken Johncock and is threatening the new leader, Al Unser. At turn number 4, Savage loses control. As trucks race across the pit area to the site of the crash, and STP mechanic Armando Terran runs to... Savage and Terran both rush to the hospital. Terran is dead on arrival. Savage will hang on for a month before this race takes its final toll. When rain finally halts the race, Johncock is declared winner. New safety standards follow, but the race is still to the swiftest.
Who's in charge?
Atlanta International Raceway hosted the Winston Cup Stock Cars last Sunday. The big story was Ford versus Chevy.
Up the car. The points chart tells the final story. Reutemann is the leader by 1 point. Piquet, world champion, by 1 point. Jones looks a happy man as the outgoing champion embraces the new champion and whispers what in his ear. But it all starts all over again next year. Sunday afternoon here in Rio de Janeiro, it's hotter than ever, and ahead of 26 drivers lie 61 laps of this twisting, tortuous circuit. The opening round of the 1984 Championship Grand Prix is going to be a very tough race. indeed, and there's an enormous crowd of Brazilians here to see the fun. Obviously, the man they're cheering on, their hero, the reigning world champion, Nelson Piquet. There's the Brazilian flag, which is going to wave madly if he can repeat his last 2 wins here. But on pole position, Elio De Angelis, alongside him, Michele Alboreto, Derek Warwick, Alan Prost, Nigel Mansell, Niki Lauda, all determined to keep Nelson Piquet away from that 3 wins in a row. There at the front picture, number 27, that's the red Ferrari of Michele Alboreto. Number 11, the Black Lotus, moving away off the grid. This is the final warm-up lap. You'll see the cars weaving to get some heat into their tyres. That sounds strange on a day as hot as this, but it's very important that these tyres are sticky and giving the maximum grip right from the green light. So, De Angelis in the Black Lotus, Alboreto in the red Ferrari, leading the 26 cars on this final warm-up lap. There's Derek Warwick in the yellow Renault number 16, the third of those cars. Behind him, Alain Prost with the red and white McLaren, Nigel Mansell in the Lotus, Niki Lauda in his McLaren, and there you see Warwick starting to weave to get some warmth into the tyres, and the crowd absolutely agog, throwing bits of paper, they're cheering, they're waving. They've been sitting in those bleachers for a long time, building up the atmosphere, and now in a few months, the excitement that they've waited all year for, the Brazilian Grand Prix, will be underway. De Angelis, with only the 2nd pole position of his career, very anxious indeed to turn. The Renaults use them, the Lotus use them, and so do the French Ligiers for the first time this season. All the 6 cars coming up to take their allocated place indicated by the yellow signboards. The starting procedure will be a red light, and following the red light will be Ferrari at the front. Storming run on this first of 61 laps. Alboreto, Mansell, De Angelis 4th, Lauda is 5th. Alain Prost down there in the traffic somewhere, he's made a fairly slow start as well. So the 2nd row man, Alain Prost, well done, but there is Piquet, Nelson Piquet coming charging on the straight.